Hello, everyone. I'm Barbara Ham-Lee. On today's show, the first Another View Roundtable of 2018. And boy, do they have a lot to talk about. Like the book Fire and Fury and how the White House is dealing with it. And Oprah's speech at the Golden Globe Awards. Was it her foray into presidential politics? And what do we say about the latest ad for H&M Clothiers? The one with the little black boy wearing a shirt declaring him the coolest monkey in the jungle. Roger Chesley, Tim Seibles, Bill Thomas, and Carol Pretlow debate these and other issues. It's the Another View Roundtable, and it's coming up next, so stay tuned.
Discussing today's topics from an African-American perspective, this is Another View.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Another View. I'm Barbara Ham-Lee. Before I introduce you to our roundtable panelists, let me remind you of a special event WHRO and WHRV is hosting. It's the screening of Lorraine Hansberry's Sighted Eyes, Feeling Heart, and it's tomorrow, Saturday, January the 13th, at 2:30 p.m. at First Presbyterian Church of Norfolk, located on Colonial Avenue in the Ghent section of the city. We will have a presentation by the Not for Just for February players. I love that title, Not Just for February players, followed by the screening and then a talkback about the life and times of this literary giant. We are providing childcare and it's all free. However, we do need you to register, so please go to whro.org/events and sign up. And I am so looking forward to seeing all of you tomorrow at 2:30 for the screening of Sighted Eyes, Feeling Heart. And now let's meet our roundtable pundits. Roger Chesley is a columnist for the Virginian-Pilot, and you can read his columns every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. Roger, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Lovely 2018,
Absolutely.
Barbara.
I'm telling you, who knows? It's been a rocky start already. So absolutely. Tim Seibles is here, Mr. Poet Laureate, author, and English professor at Old Dominion University. Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year to you, Barbara.
How you doing?
I'm doing all right.
And joining us by phone is Bill Thomas, our community activist. Hello, Bill.
Hey, Happy New Year, everybody.
Happy New Year.
It's all good.
It's all good, absolutely. And Carol Pretlow is supposed to join us. We're hoping that she will arrive here. Apparently, she was having a little bit of trouble getting off the campus of Norfolk State today. So we'll carry on, and if she gets here, we'll just bring her right on in, and it should be no problem. So lots to talk about, but the big issue from yesterday, every time I write the script a couple of days early, something else happens. So President Trump is reported to have used foul language to reject the pitch on immigration reform affecting people entering from Africa and Haiti, saying, quote, "Why are we having all these people from an expletive countries?" And instead suggested we allow more entrants from places like Norway. Now, Dick Durbin has come out and said, I was there. He said it. The president is trying to walk it back. Tim, your thoughts?
Well, I don't have a lot to say. I mean, President Trump has repeatedly shown himself to be bigoted and stupid. And I don't know that we can expect better. My expectations are extremely low. What I'm hoping, of course, is that it just maybe this kind of comment from him clarifies for some people exactly who he is, because I think I know a lot of people, most of them in the white community, who are still to some extent in denial about who this man is. And you're hoping that maybe something like this that is so blatant will just clarify certain ideas for them about why maybe he seems so troubling to certainly communities of color, but Islamic folks and so on.
Roger, when he was candidate Trump,
Sure.
he talked about people from Mexico being, rapists and all of that. I mean, It seems that this whole idea of him with people of color, he seems to have an issue with.
He certainly does. And I think the thing that is most troubling is, what does this mean for people of color in this country? What are the policies and things that he's trying to pass or things that he's trying to put forward? Has this undercurrent of, is there racial animus toward that? And I went back to some of the things, because when I've written about the president or the president-elect after he had won the election, people said, well, he's not so bad against black people. There haven't been that many things that have been said. So I had to go back through some of the statements that he's been made, and I put a lot of this. I have to give a lot of credit to Nicholas Kristof, who wrote a very damning column about him during the 2016 election. I mean, you have to remember some of the things that he said over the years, or some of the actions that he's taken. The Mexican immigrants who were bringing crime and were rapists, suggesting that NFL players, by and large, he was talking about players who were black who were protesting issues here in the U.S., calling them sons of bitches and saying that they should be fired. When at the same time, he was very kind to some of the white supremacists who had marched in Charlottesville and said that there were bad actors on both sides, trying to bring some type of moral equivalency to that particular protest. The discrimination that he and his father practiced in New York back in the 1970s, in which the Justice Department sued and they ended up settling with the Justice Department. The hysteria he helped worsen in New York City during the Central Park jogger case. When the woman was raped, there were several blacks and one Latino who were charged in the case. We would later find out many years later that they were innocent, but they were so scared, they admitted to making the crime, and he was calling for the death penalty. And if that had actually been followed, you would have had innocent people who would have been executed. The treatment of his black employees in his casinos. He was the main official or public celebrity pushing the whole birther movement, and that the former president was born in Kenya. So I know Jemele Hill caught a lot of flack for some of her comments saying that he was racist, but how many different pieces of evidence do you need?
Well, let's ask Bill. Bill, how many different pieces of evidence do you need?
I think there's a lot of hysteria on both sides. What the president said was despicable, and that shouldn't be tolerated in the United States of America. But I think Oprah put it best, and not quoting her directly, this has always been an issue in our country. And as long as your skin has a color or hue to it, America has not healed itself from, in the 19th century, we own the people. In the 20th century, we condemned a race of people and put them all in jail because their country had declared war on us. But at the same time, the Germans and Russians, who killed over 75 million people, were not looked at in that way. They were forgiven. When my father came back from World War II and was on a train, he had to sit at the back of the train, and the German prisoners sit at the front. This is an issue that is America. It hasn't been resolved. And I never put confidence in individuals, as I have said 1,000 times in this program, because individuals will disappoint you, will let you down. I'm clearly not for what he said. It's despicable. It's intolerant. It's racist. It's everything possible. And if he doesn't have the courage of his convictions to go apologize personally to the young lady congressman from Nevada, I'm done with that. But I'm not done with the policies. I'm not going to get out of the game. I'm not going to let them chase me away from what the real issue is that we as a people have to get engaged with policies and get people and things and law in place and economic development and education back in our communities that we can control so we can have a better life. I don't believe in people. I don't care what they say. They're all lying to us. What we need to do is look at the policies and the principles that they are displaying. But unlike some of my good friends there, when the other side does it, not as stupid things like this, because this is pretty stupid and damnable. But when the side is wrong, like he is in his case, to hell with him. I'm not going to tolerate that. But I'm still not going to force this to chase me out of the game. It's too important. So I'm going to support the President of the United States, but I'm not going to support the person that's represented with these foul, misleading, and crazy ass, excuse my language, statements.
So let me make sure that I'm clear from your perspective. Then you still support the office, but you're not supporting the person who's in the office. Is that what you're saying?
I would be despicable if I allowed anyone to say anything about that, about any race of people, and not stand up and say something against it. That is not America. That is not who we are, and that's not who we should be.
Carol Pretlow has now joined us. Yay, Carol. We're glad you made it.
My apologies for my delay.
Well, we're talking about President Trump's comments using an expletive to talk about countries or people who might immigrate here from Haiti and from Africa versus his preference that people from Norway come instead.
Well, repeatedly as the president makes statements that I disagree with, I think back to something that Maya Angelou said, when someone tells you who they are, believe them. And when I heard that statement last night, I was appalled, but not surprised, because this is the kind of thinking that our president engages in.
So let me ask a question then. So yesterday it came out that that the Trump administration wants to push Medicaid, people who are on Medicaid, to have to work, as an example. Are there policies, because we know that there's apparently this overall feeling from the president down that people of color are marginalized? Is this how it manifests itself, Roger?
I think there are certain stereotypes that are prevalent within this administration that's very harmful to people who can't, who are maybe vulnerable, who maybe are not represented well, who might not have a lot of money to contribute to candidates who are running. And now let me be clear. If you are able-bodied, you should work. But and I think I was listening to a report on either NPR earlier this morning on Morning Edition, a plug for you guys.
Thank you very much.
And also some of the things that I've seen online today that talks about, we're not talking about a huge proportion who are getting Medicaid who are either not able-bodied or, who are not children or who are not who wouldn't really be a major part of the workforce. And then what is the pay of the jobs that they would be getting? There just seems to be this sense among some people in government that people who are poor, it's their fault. And that, if they just pick themselves up by their own bootstraps, everything would be good. There's just this, and I saw this in some of the legislation that is being bandied about in Richmond this year. There are some some legislators have said, whether or not you agree with this, but if you win at least $25,000, I believe the amount is $25,000 in the lottery, and you've gotten public assistance before, some of that money should go back to the state. Now, okay, I know that you've been helped out by the state, but why does there seem to be this targeting of people who need help? I mean, what do they do?
But I think this goes back a long way. It's much easier to think if you're poor, it's because you didn't try. It's because you didn't take school seriously. I've heard all kinds of things from people, but it's much easier to think that way than to think, is there something systemic that has to be addressed so that people of color, if they are poor, or people who are color, poor,
exactly.
Is there something systemic that we have to deal with? And I think oftentimes, not always, but often, wealthy folks, certainly those who sympathize with the Trumpist worldview, are headlong to believe that they have earned every penny that they have, and they don't know why everybody else can't do what they did. And so it's much easier to walk through the world believing that if you're poor, that's your fault. If you were just me, then you'd be great. I mean,
exactly. And Bill, I'm coming to you. Go ahead, Brian.
And just quickly, there's so many people who were, as the old saying goes, they were born on third base and they think they hit a triple. And even the president and talking about where he only got $1 million loan from his father to start out a business. I mean, okay, do you understand how tone deaf that
How many of us sitting at this table have gotten $1 million loan from anybody in our family, right?
I'm still waiting on my $1 million loan.
Bill, go ahead.
And I think that's where some of the folks on the other side go too far. I think we have to stop looking for government to do things that we have to do for ourselves. I think the basic construct of having a successful life in the United States of America is to have a good, strong family, have some values religiously connected to morals and values, to have a very good education system and a work ethic. And if someone is healthy enough to do work in exchange for getting help from others, then I think that they should work. But I always hear this slang about, well, this and that and the other, we starting on third base or first base. It doesn't really matter. That's the reality of it all. So what we have to do is what all of your parents and grandparents told you, the same thing they told me. We have to do it twice as good. And we just have to keep that going. We have to build up our institutions. Our public schools by zip codes are not performing the way they should. Too many of our children are unchurched with values and things that we need to do to overcome these obstacles instead of weighing in the mire. We are in this position under Democratic leadership and Republican leadership. The issue now is the fact that what they used to do in back rooms, they are reporting it. This kind of conversation just didn't start here. LBJ, Lyndon Baines Johnson, called us the N-word. I mean, it goes all the way back, but those were different times. But today we're smart enough, hopefully moral enough, to speak up and fight that back. But at the same time, the work is on us, not on the government or other people.
Roger.
And you need to get up and go to work.
I don't think the problem is that it happened years ago. I think the concern is we're still having conversations like this today. You mean our own chief executive has this mentality and he's voicing it today? Isn't that something that should have ended decades ago? And
the only thing that changed, Roger, is the fact that people are now talking about it in public. It's always happened.
But let me
both sides of the aisle.
Bill, let me ask you this, because in my work with Norfolk Redevelopment Housing Authority, for example, I've met many people who live in our public housing communities who are poor. They are working, they have values, they have family intact, they are just poor. They're not working at jobs that will lift them up to be able to not live in public housing. So, I mean, what do you say to those folks? That it feels like there's this broad brush approach to everybody who happens to be poor, that they don't have morals and that they don't try hard.
No, that's not what I'm saying.
Okay.
And I lived in a very poor community by choice for quite a number of years, and I understand it. I get it. I think concentrated poverty has so many extraordinary experiences that are all negative that you need to break it up. Help people, not places. Help people get strong in education and work ethics and things that can be done. How can people come over this country? I was at the airport and I was talking to a young man who is working here. He makes own his own business. He's now paying, his tax rate is 50%. He has to pay Social Security. He can't vote. His mother was from Argentina, and she came in illegal, married a U.S. citizen, but now she's a citizen. She can vote, but her son, if he does anything, they're going to put him up out of here. My point is that we have to look at the overall issue of all the bad that's going on. And what we need to do is get out of this concentrated poverty. Look what's happening in Baltimore. We're trying to help people come in and do things, and people in other lands, when our children in those schools are sitting in freezing classrooms. What do you think their life is going to be at the end of the day?
Carol.
Oh, boy. This is difficult because I work with students and I see them every day, and some of them are working very hard. They're studying, they're committed to their education. They are also working at jobs in the mall, in different communities. And the irony is that when they graduate, They may be in debt. I have colleagues who are very committed to their job, to their profession, to their community, to their home. They go to church. And when they look at student loans and the interest rates on those loans, they're still in debt. It's not because of any lack of morality or religious belief or commitment to education. It's unfortunately, I don't think a political environment that is meeting those kinds of needs that they have. And I don't have answers.
And they're always,
I have an answer to that.
And they're always,
I know you have an answer.
I know you do.
Hold on, Bill. I'm coming to you there right after
also,
Tim.
I think it's just worth considering that it isn't like black folks or other folks of color haven't been trying. There are systemic reasons why black people and other people of color keep finding themselves disenfranchised and on the edges of society. Black people didn't create schools that don't have heated classrooms. That's not a thing that black folks chose. I mean, and there are always going to be exceptions. There are always going to be people who just came to the country and now they have their own business. There's always going to be that, but we have to start thinking systemically. What are the reasons, the systemic reasons that keep people of color out of the mainstream, out of the best jobs, out of schools that work? That's what we have to address. I'm sure you can always find an exception, someone who comes here with nothing and makes it big, of course. But let's talk about systemic issues. That's to me where the heart of this stuff is.
Okay, Bill, you get the last one on this, and then we're going to move on to Fire and Fury. Go ahead.
Well, it's very clear to me that, first of all, you don't have to go to college. And if you're in college doing student loans that you know you can't afford, you need to go out and get a trade and learn something else, because you will never, ever recapture your money. It's just unrecoverable. But I think the basic to all of that is the fact that since in our areas, in our zip codes, our public schools and everybody's fighting the good battle, they're just not doing enough, or we're not doing enough as a community. It's not the teachers, it's not the superintendent. We're all as a community not doing enough to get our kids the very, very basic so they can be successful with the principles to carry them through life.
Anybody want to respond to that? Go ahead.
I got to say
Roger.
this. I mean, people go to college because they believe that that's going to get them a better
opportunity to be able to rise,
a better career, a better pay over the long run. Now, maybe we should make better choices about where we go to college. Maybe we should go to community college for 2 years and then transfer to a public school for the last public college for the last 2 years. But the point of fact is, it's just so expensive now that maybe we need to make better choices. But I would hate to tell people maybe you shouldn't go to college. You know, that's a good route for many people too.
But I didn't say go to not get educated. I said maybe you cannot afford to go to college, because going to college these days do not guarantee you anything for most people in our zip codes, but a huge amount of debts in hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Let's talk to Anita in Chesapeake. Hi, Anita. You're on the air.
Hi, thanks for taking my call. Let's not hate Trump too much today for what he said yesterday. He just ignorantly voiced something that most, I shouldn't say most, but a lot of white Americans feel and would only say it behind closed doors. However, we are already importing people, white people from other countries, Scandinavian countries, and from Russia. I have happened to work for 2 people here that came from Crimea, and they were invited, young people in college, they were recruited by the Americans to come to America, and they were granted their green cards within 6 months. We want white people in America because white people in America are not having enough babies.
I agree.
Okay, let's we'll take that under consideration. Anita, thanks. Go ahead, Bill. You said you agree?
No, I agree with her. And the remarks I made against Trump wasn't the fact that that's not been said. It's been said since 1868. Who knows? This conversation's been going on. What Mr. Trump just did, he just said it in company that made it public. Those things are going behind doors every day. How does this thing become systemic? Because people's minds have not changed. They still believe, basically, as Oprah Winfrey correctly said, that white people are more more contributors to the success of this exceptionalism in America than black people or any people of color. That's the mindset, and you just got to get on with it and figure out how you're going to get above it. That's what I fight against every day.
If you're just joining us, we're talking with the Another View Roundtable with Roger Chesley of the Virginian-Pilot, Carol Pretlow with NSU, community activist Bill Thomas, and poet laureate Tim Seibles. Fire and Fury came out. The White House has been doing a lot of defensive moves, but one of them was this whole idea of our president's mental state, and he felt the need to respond to it. So let's take a listen to what he had to say about it.
This morning you were tweeting about your mental state. Why did you feel the need to tweet about that this morning?
Well, only because I went to the best colleges, or college. I went to I had a situation where I was a very excellent student, came out, made billions and billions of dollars, became one of the top business people, went to television, and for 10 years was a tremendous success, as you probably have heard. Ran for president one time and won. And then I hear this guy that doesn't know me at all. By the way, did not interview me he said he interviewed me for 3 hours in the White House. It didn't exist, okay? It's in his imagination. And what I was heartened by, because I talk about fake news and the fake news media, was the fact that so many of the people that I talk about in terms of fake news actually came to the defense of this great administration and even myself, because they know the author and they know he's a fraud. And when I saw some of the people say, and you look at some of his past books, he did a book on Rupert Murdoch. It was a terrible expose, and it was false. So much of it was false. I consider it a work of fiction, and I think it's a disgrace that somebody's able to do something like that. The libel laws are very weak in this country. If they were strong, it would be very helpful. You wouldn't have things like that happen where you can say whatever comes to your head.
Where you can say whatever comes to your head. Tim?
Well, the funny thing, and Trevor Noah talked about this last night on Comedy Central, is that he is the king of saying whatever comes to his head, however insulting or ill-informed. And the idea that he's upset about the libel laws because they don't do enough to stop that, it's just, I don't know. It's astonishing to me how completely unself-aware this man is. And I mean, and everyone was right in the previous section.
Uh-huh.
Of course, we know that there's been bigotry for centuries. Of course, the difference is we have a outspoken bigot in the White House as the president. That's the problem. I'm not so naive as to think if he didn't say it, nobody'd be feeling it. That's not what I mean. Yeah. But the president is supposed to be an emblem of the best aspects of American culture and the best possibilities of our citizenry, not the worst. And he seems to be just exactly the opposite of what we need now. And it's not a question of him just being a white dude. There are plenty of people of all colors who are good, forward-thinking human beings. I just think he's adding a kind of toxin to the mix that is just very dangerous right now. That's my basic.
So, go ahead, Carol.
And I don't think he knows a lot about society. And what amazed me is he's really sold books, because I'm not a person that buys a lot of popular media. But when I heard what was happening with this book, to Barnes & Noble, I went, find me this book. And I think a lot of people who may not have ignored the book and discounted it
have you read
because
it?
of him. I just got it last night. I'm so excited.
Roger.
You know, there have been some criticisms waged, filed against Michael Wolff, the author,
yeah.
and was he sloppy on some points? Were some things rushed? But that may be so, but, there's been rushing in some of the legislation that the president wanted to help shepherd through last year. I mean, the tax plan that we now have and that he signed into law, that was rushed. So you can't complain about, it's kind of two-faced to complain about, well, maybe this author did some things that he didn't tie everything down. But, we're going to have all sorts of issues dealing with this as the new taxes get rolled out. So it's somewhat kind of funny about that. And I'm just spitballing here, but you almost wonder if he made the statements he did last night to get people not focusing on the book anymore.
You know, Bill, I don't recall, and maybe you do, because you're a historian of sorts too, but I really don't recall as much conversation or any conversation about the actual mental state of a president.
Reagan.
In my lifetime. Reagan? Okay, all right. Go ahead, Bill, respond to that.
Well, the issue is Reagan. I mean,
Okay.
The man is 70 years old. He's set in his ways. He's done things a certain way. He's lived his life a certain way. I understood that all going in mine, and I had like I said, I have no faith in people. I have faith in ideas and values and things what people do. To say the tax bill was rushed, they've been playing around with that tax bill for 30 years, and it appears to be doing good
they
now.
haven't.
Yes, they have. There hasn't been a major tax change.
But not this bill.
The tax bill, the one that just passed?
They weren't debating this bill for 30 years. They might not have done a major.
Congress has not had a major change in the federal tax laws since Ronald Reagan.
Okay. Yes,
Is
that's
that true or false?
That's true.
That's true.
That's not the
but they
issue.
have been debating this particular tax bill.
No,
and
I didn't mean to say.
Okay, that's the way you said it. That's the way you said it.
Well, I didn't mean to say it that way.
Okay.
There has not been any major changes in tax law since Ronald Reagan. Not this bill, but the aspect of changing taxes so people could keep more money in their pockets. And it appears that up to 100 companies are giving raises, they're giving bonuses, they're hiring people, they're paying people more money. In February, I should see increases in my pay that won't go to the government, but will come back to me along with 100 other people. It appears that the African-American community is also appreciating with that. People are hiring more. You can see it. There's a kind of buster in the air about there's economic opportunities available. And just for my own family point, my two kids that are lawyers now, one I already had one, but my daughter as well, they got full-time jobs within the last 6 months. So I'm just saying that this appears to be helpful to that cause. But I know most of you guys hate. No, and I'll finish. I know most people, not you guys, but most people hate Donald Trump. They just don't like him. And so he has to be more careful with his loose lips than he has been in the past. But I'd rather somebody tell me what they think about me than to get behind their closed doors and say exactly what they really mean, and then I suffer the consequences of poor schools, bad schools. Last point, if those were 300 white children sitting up in classrooms in their coats, freezing to death, they would have ended the world.
We're talking about Baltimore City for those who may not know.
I'm saying that.
Yeah, I know. I just want to make sure.
And if there were Jewish children, and I come from a Jewish community, that's where I lived, getting killed on our streets like the way some of our kids are today, even in our cities today, they would stop the world and we would go forward. So I'm just a realist. I live in a real city. I don't think there's a bit of difference, a bucket of warm spit difference between Democratic leadership and Republican leadership. But I do think there is principles involved that we can all catch on to and move forward together as a nation. That's what we got to do.
Okay, let's talk to Fran in Norfolk, and then we're going to move on to another topic. Hi, Fran. You're on the air.
Hi. Thank you for taking my call. I just wanted to point out that I find it extremely annoying that in his statements, not only did he trash the African nations and Haiti, but then pointed out that we needed more people from, say, Norway. Well, Norway and the Scandinavian countries have been having in the past few years some terrible race problems. The neo-Nazi movement is growing by leaps and bounds. There are some real serious racial issues going on there. So what is he telling us? That, no, we don't want anybody of color to come in, but we'll take your neo-Nazis because we don't have enough here.
Thanks, Fran, for the call. Anybody want to respond before we move on?
I just think because the prime minister was here, he
just pulled it out of his head.
That was where he pulled out. He was just looking for a European nation with a mostly white population and he just went straight to there.
Okay, let's go on to Oprah. She made an impassioned speech at the Golden Globes about the hashtag Me Too movement and the treatment of women. Lots of speculation that she's running for president. Also, lots of backlash from the African-American community for comparing what happened to Racy Taylor to what is perceived by some as a, quote, rich white woman problem. So your thoughts. Let's start with you, Roger.
Boy, I tell you, sometimes you can nitpick somebody's comments and speech. I was really stunned when I saw the complaints about that in the news coverage afterward. Look, I don't think she was trying to equate the two. I mean, obviously, what happened to Racy Taylor was terrible, and she never got any redress for that. She never got any help through the criminal justice system at that time. I thought there was more a sense that, hey, there are still individuals today who are women who are being sexually harassed. And I think she was just making trying to draw a line between the two.
Mm-hmm. As a matter of fact,
I thought she made some good comments, and I thought it was a very impassioned speech and a very powerful speech. I thought some folks went a little bit too far, saying now she's going to run for president. It was a good speech. It was one day. And if I were her, with all the money she has and all the clout and visibility that she has, I would, say, hey, I'm good. I'm good right where I am.
For those who may not know who Racy Taylor is, she was a woman back during Jim Crow in the 40s. She was walking home from church. She was a young mother and married, and 6 white men pulled her from the side of the road, threw her in their car, and took her deep in the woods and raped her. And she spoke up, and she talked about and told people what happened, and she got no redress from the criminal system or the justice system at all. But to that point, let's play a clip from Oprah's speech where she talks about the inclusion of all women in the hashtag Me Too movement.
But it's not just a story affecting the entertainment industry. It's one that transcends any culture, geography, race, religion, politics, or workplace. So I want tonight to express gratitude to all the women who have endured years of abuse and assault because they, like my mother, had children to feed and bills to pay and dreams to pursue.
So, Tim, I've heard some within the African-American community who would say, this movement is not about us. It's not about black people, black women, that it's more about white women of privilege and that we're not really included. But I think Oprah pulled the entire tie together. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I certainly think that we still are dealing with a criminal justice system that leans, of course, more favorably upon white people under most every circumstance. But it doesn't mean that we should therefore just shrug our shoulders and say no matter what, black people aren't going to get justice. I think you have to push in every direction you can. And I'm hoping, in my heart of hearts, I believe it is possible, whether or not in my lifetime is another question, but that it is possible that people across the color, all the various color lines, will begin to see that justice is something that we all need to have, and if we leave any community out, we damage the whole community. This is what I think Oprah was gesturing toward. She didn't say it exactly that way, but I think the idea that the Me Too movement only is for white women, I think is a wildly narrow interpretation of what's going on. It's the same thing early on when feminism was just becoming mainstream. Feminism is for white women. It's like, nah, equal rights are for all human beings and feminism is for all women, but we get all confused about this kind of stuff, and people are, I think there's this kind of lingering reluctance to join forces across certain color lines. And I think we've just got to move on until we can get past the bigots and the other.
Roger?
Yeah, and as a man, I can't internalize all things that women go through on a day-to-day basis in terms of safety, in terms of sexual harassment and assault. But I should be able to say that should stop. It shouldn't have been the case 50 years ago. It shouldn't be the case today. And I think it is good that we have this attention. I think some of the things that we have seen through all walks of life, not just in the entertainment field, politicians, it had a big role in Roy Moore losing the race in Alabama. I mean, there shouldn't be acceptance of that. And we need to make the workplace and to make relationships and everything else, they should be fair, safe, and I think it's good that we're having these discussions now. I think it's good that some of these people who have been, really sexual predators and had sway over things that were going in Hollywood or in politics. I mean, John Conyers basically had to give up his job in Congress because of this as well. And I know Representative Conyers. He was in Detroit at the same time. He's been there forever.
But when you were working there,
right, and these things should come out. And a day of reckoning has come forth. That's a good thing.
Carol is the only woman on the panel. What say you?
I felt very empowered and very proud of Oprah's comments. Now, I knew that she couldn't cover every single detail of every single situation. This is step one. Guess what? 10 years ago, this step one hadn't been taken. So we take it, and I'm not advocating moving slowly, but I am recognizing that it's going to take more than one speech and one occasion, and that is the first step, and I'm proud and excited.
So, Bill, is she going to run for president? Bill?
Yeah, I hope she does.
It took you a while to respond there.
No, it didn't. I just had took the phone from my ear. But no, I hope she does. I thought her speech was very good, very gratifying. She's a lady who has, through self-preservation and awareness and troubles and being black and everything else, has aspired to the top of her life in terms of being successful. She did everything on an intellectual basis. She had an intellectual conversation. I don't think she should run for president because of her wealth, but if she does, I think it would be very, very good conversation where we could start talking about things that really matter. And you could see someone who walked her talk, who did well. She didn't lean to me to be women or black or anything, but I think all of this points out at the end of the day is, and Roger may not agree with this, but #black. We live this life every freaking day of our lives. And we can't walk away from it. Our skin is our skin color. America has a problem with that for whatever reason. That has not been stamped out since 1619 when we first came ashore on the shores of the city of Hampton a year before the Mayflower, and it still exists today.
Roger?
I just wanted to mention the Marist poll that came out today, conducted for NPR, by the way, shows her leading Trump 50 to 39% in a so-called in a supposed 2020 race, what would happen, and that's what people are feeling today. But there's so much that happens after you declare for office. Everything it's all your background is examined and re-examined and then examined again. People that might like you today then might despise you. And let's face it, race and gender. It makes it tougher for somebody like Oprah in those demographics to win.
Well, I mean, even Seal has come out and pulled out photographs of Oprah and Harvey Weinstein together and called her out on Twitter and said, she was part of the problem, so to speak. So, I mean, there's all kinds of things that could go on. But let's talk to Kathy in Virginia Beach. Hi, Kathy. You're on the air.
Hello. Thanks for taking my call. I was wanting to, I think some of you may have already alluded to it since I had called. But I'm a white woman from Southern California, where we don't think we have racial issues, but we do, and I know it. But my point is that I don't know that Oprah was really trying to do a full equation of Recy Taylor. But I had never heard of her. Again, I'm from the West Coast, and I'm not young. I mean, I'm a 70s baby, so I think that was a good thing. She brought about this hero that most people didn't know. I had never heard that name before in my life, and equated her with something that's going on now, which was not near as horrible as what she had, but it was still a way to pay homage to this hero that was underground and had just died. So
Right.
Absolutely.
couldn't tell her story anymore. So I just wanted to lend that comment, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Kathy. We
Thank
appreciate the
you.
call. All right, we're almost out of time, and I've got to get to H&M clothing store. They apologized after the ad with a black boy modeling a sweatshirt that says "coolest monkey in the jungle." Social media went crazy, but his mother says, "Get over it." She's from Sweden by way of Kenya, and she says that she doesn't see the world this way, and that there was nothing wrong with that, with the sweatshirt that her son has modeled for years, and that we all have an issue because we think that there's a problem with it. And even beyond the fact that the mother didn't see an issue with it, my question to you Roundtable, is this whole idea of these companies putting these types of ads out, then asking for apologizing, asking for forgiveness as opposed to permission to begin with. How does this happen? What is going on systemically that's making this happen?
Well, what they need is some folks of color in their boardrooms. That's what they need, because I can't imagine anybody black would have been in on that advertising campaign and said, "Oh yeah, let's go with that." I can't imagine it. And I can appreciate that the kid's mother says, "Oh, I don't think of it that way." But given the history of this country, there's no way to avoid the racist implications of that particular line. And so you just think, oh, come on, y'all. I mean, that's what killed me about it. I'm thinking you can't be that naive about the racial/racist implications of something like the coolest monkey in the jungle. Come on.
And the fact that they sold out the clothing line in their UK stores, but even in the UK, there are racial issues. I mean, Carol.
Well, I was just appalled by it, and it was mystifying to me why they didn't know it was a problem, because even with few black people on their board of directors, hey, they're in the society. They should have known that was a problem. Or were they thinking, people will ignore it and we'll sell lots of T-shirts and everybody will give us free publicity? I'm just mystified.
But the other thing is,
I sometimes wonder if some of these companies, they really know exactly what they're doing, and they just want the publicity to be in the limelight or in the spotlight for a while, even if it's negative for a while. Because I can't see in the 21st century you would not realize the implications of calling a black boy a monkey. Now, there were other kids in the campaign, and they weren't. Why weren't one of those children who were white wearing that shirt? Why was he the one who was wearing that shirt? And it does not seem just a coincidence.
Well, and do we need to start talking more with our pocketbooks as opposed to our words in terms of accepting things? Like, Dove comes to mind. That was another one that recently had an ad where a woman starts out brown and they talk about taking a Dove wash. And when the wash is done, she's white. Bill, what are your thoughts?
I think this is why we are where we are as a race. While we're discussing this, which his mother is okay with it.
She got paid.
I don't care. I don't care about that. What I care about are the kids that are sitting in freezing classrooms in Baltimore. What I care about is the Virginia General Assembly that's in session now, getting ready to make laws and do things that are going to be quite harmful to some segments of our communities more than others. And we're not participating in the discussions at all. Our community is not.
That's not true.
I agree.
That's not true.
But Bill also, if I could,
Bill
also.
In my judgment, let me reference that then. In my judgment.
Okay,
hold on,
in
Tim.
my judgment.
Then let me let Tim respond. Go ahead.
I was going to say, but the fact that a company feels they can have a T-shirt that says "coolest monkey in the jungle" on a black kid is part of the reason that there are black schools with no heating in them. See, it's systemic.
Give me a break.
It's an attitude about race, Bill, that we're trying to talk about. You keep trying to make it these individual incidents. It's all connected. It's all connected, Bill. That's what we're trying to say. If any company, white, brown, or otherwise, thinks that they can put that on a black child, it represents a mentality in the culture, which is what leads to some of the stuff that you're talking about correcting. They're not separate issues.
Roger.
The biggest fight against a company doing those kind of things, don't buy their products.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
to
something that you said, Bill, you know, we can walk and chew gum at the same time. Now, we've been very involved. People, African Americans and poor people have been very involved in some of the issues that are roiling, that will be discussed in the General Assembly this year. From, you know, the whole issue of felon disenfranchisement to trying to decriminalize some of our marijuana laws, of redistricting. There are all sorts of people who've been taking up these issues. We didn't choose to necessarily talk about them today, but that doesn't mean that we're not involved in them.
No. I'm not saying this particular program. I'm not criticizing this program for doing it. But at the end of the day, in a capitalistic society, rules and capital trump everything.
Nobody's disagreeing.
And if we're not involved in setting those policies and setting for full funding for Virginia State and Norfolk State, who are public schools, to look at all of these really, really high differences in funding for some schools versus the others, even by zip codes, and looking into why that's happening. If we don't get it and dig our fingers underneath the ground and get our fingers dirty to figure out how can we bring financial economic equity. I don't give a doggone about whether or not they look at me if I'm black or another color, because that doesn't matter. What I care about are the laws and the policies that are created, like this young man that I met today in the airport, who is a dreamer that came here working hard, and he can't, a DACA person, he can't vote, he pays 50% tax, he pays Social Security, he can't get Social Security, he can't vote, and if he does anything wrong, he's going to go to jail and go out. That's what I think is better. I think we ought to look at our core problems. Our schools are underfunded, our teachers are underpaid, our infrastructures are not being properly invested in. And until we do that, you can't build strong fences at the top of the hill versus having ambulances down in the valleys dealing with all these prison reforms and things. So that's just the way I look at it.
Well, we've got about a minute and a half left, so we will talk about what's going on in the General Assembly next month and pick out some of these very issues so we can see where they're going. So everybody pay attention. That's your homework assignment.
Yes,
you know that's coming.
Yes, teacher.
Yes, teacher. Okay, so in the last minute that we have, very, very quickly, snow removal. I know I shouldn't even open this up, but do you think it's time for us to start to re-examine how we remove snow in Hampton Roads?
I think given that it seems that weather patterns are shifting, now I don't know, maybe it's just an accident of whatever, but I think, buy some real plows. Just, a few. It doesn't have to be 50, just enough to clear some of the main roadways. As it is, you see those little plows running around, that it's not going to do the trick.
Some of the same
some
people,
of those are contractors, too.
Some of the same people who complain about, not being able to get out of their neighborhoods or whatever, they would be the same folks howling about taxes being raised to deal with events that sometimes don't happen. We can go through winters here where we don't have any appreciable snow. Now, maybe the weather and the climate is changing, but will that,
will they pay for it?
Yeah, and if you're a city official, you feel like damned if you do, damned if you don't. So.
Okay, we're out of time.
All I can say to what Roger said is ditto, because I live on a street that I had to creep along the sidewalk. So,
all right, guys, we're out of time, but thank you so very much, Roundtable, and we'll get back together next month. And thank you so much for listening to Another View. You can always download the podcast at anotherviewradio.org, and don't forget to sign up for our eView newsletter, a once-a-week reminder of upcoming shows. Next week on Another View, teaching our kids to career instead of work, a fascinating book called Careering. Our theme music was composed by Jay Sennett. Lisa Godley is our show producer. Victor Bowen is our audio engineer, and Mr. Maxie Lee answered our phones. I'm Barbara Ham-Lee. Hope to see you all at the Lorraine Hansberry screening tomorrow. Go to whro.org/events for details. And thank you again for listening to Another View.